So a big thank you to my Patreon members for supporting the channel. Your help tremendously helps and allows me to continue making this content. And of course, if you do want to support the channel and gain additional perks, definitely consider becoming a Patreon member. So getting into the video, I know this is going to be one of those titles where some people will not completely understand. They'll read the title and not listen to the context of the video and be like, oh my god, you're comparing two animes. I'm more comparing the fun aspect of Irons' ability to completely wing things, talk out of his tush-tush, as I say, or BS, as other people say. I can't say the other word for obvious reasons. And then there's also the main character from Eminence in the Shadow, also known as Sid or Shadow, depending on which one he's going by, depending on the time and the day and what's going on. And just how he has this complete delusion, and he creates this imaginary world in his head as, yeah, completely winging it or BSing it, and how these two are kind of similar in a way, but with their own unique spin. So I feel like if you are a big Overlord fan, you will really enjoy the Eminence in the Shadow, just because of the fun way that the story goes about creating the main protagonist and the interactions that they have within the companions that they're with. Irons with the Floor Guardians and the NPCs, and then Sid or Shadow with, of course, his little Shadow Council or the Shadow Garden underground organization that he has, that is fighting against a cult that he completely made up off the top of his head and ended up actually being completely real, but he still thinks is completely fake. So of course I'm going based on the first volume, or at least halfway through the first volume, so I don't really want to spoil anything beyond that, so I'm going to kind of play ignorant in some parts, but just give people a bit of a bite-sized chunk of, if you're interested in the Eminence in the Shadow and you are an Overlord fan, then allow this video to kind of explain some things and what I think's kind of fun about them being similar. So Overlord, we all know that Irons was transported into an alternative world with the whole establishment, the guild building, the NPCs, the items, you name it, everything on him in game, of course not where he came from the real world, but everything in game, and he is trying to sort of gain influence in the new world, though of course our boy Demi himself has misinterpreted everything in the most hilarious way possible. Irons says, hey, I'd love a burger, and Demi goes, what, you want to conquer the world? I've been a little bit over-exaggerating there, but you kind of get the point that anytime Irons says something, Demiurge has a tendency to kind of overblow it and make it into something more grander than what it really is, which then leads him into kind of leading the other NPCs on down this rabbit hole of Irons's epic plan that's going to go on for hundreds or if not thousands of years. So that's the fun part about it, and Irons has always kind of gone about it and been like, oh my god, how am I going to get out of this, and it just leads to one epic disaster after another, but at the same time it's hilarious and it always turns out for the better. It's the same kind of situation with Eminence in the Shadow, where the main protagonist is transported to an alternative world and he has a thing called Chibios, which many other animes have done that kind of style. It's basically where you, and it's not just an exclusive thing in Japan, but it happens in, of course, Western countries, where individuals will create fictional worlds in their head, pretending to be heroes, knights, the devil, or whatever they want to do. They create this fictional fantasy world, whatever they desire, and they try to pretend to live out it in the real world. That is basically what Sid or Shadow tried to do, where he created this organization that was fighting against this evil cult. But the funny thing is that it ended up being true all along, and he ends up recruiting individuals that end up building this underground Shadow Garden organization where they are fighting against that very thing. And throughout, you know, parts of the volume, the first one, he still thinks it's all fake. It's all fake in his mind. He's kind of surprised that the people that are close to him are playing along with this ruse, and so bad situations happen, but it's all just kind of imaginary in his head. He's made it all up, but it all became true. And every time a situation happens, whether it's a kidnapping or an attack, he does things in the most dumbest way possible. Like, he'll go in the opposite direction that he's meant to go in. Like, everyone's like, oh, well, that's the direction we're meant to go. And he goes, no, I'm going to go this way. And it ends up being the correct direction, because there ends up being some secret passage there, or something ends up happening where that ends up being the correct path, or ends up being the better path due to other circumstances. So it kind of falls in that similar situation of Overlord. Now, I'm trying to simplify it to not spoil the story completely, as mentioned, but that's what I find really interesting about the Eminence in the Shadow compared to Overlord, is that the main protagonists kind of like two sides to the same coin. They are unique in their own way, but they've got some similar strings that can kind of draw you in. So if you kind of like Overlord, you're kind of going to like the Eminence and the Shadow, in my opinion. But even though there are some very similar parts, they go about things in a very unique fashion. And this is something that I've spoken about multiple times when it comes to isekais. I really enjoy isekais that try to do things in a unique fashion. It's very hard to make isekais completely unique when we've got so many isekais out there now. We get at least 4+, give or take, isekais coming out every anime season, whether it's new isekais or seasonal returns. And it can be really hard to create something unique when you've done almost everything. And especially with introductions into isekai worlds always just end with something like a truck ends up running people over, which is why we have the whole meme of Truck Khan, or just ends up dying from exhaustion due to overwork because of the kind of the cogwheel kind of mindset in Japan. Those kind of things. With Sid, he ends up beating his head against a tree multiple times trying to allow him to gain magic in the real world, and then he ends up walking in front of a car, or running in front of a car, however you want to put it. He kind of just stumbles in front of a car and gets run over because he kept beating his head and made himself dizzy, and he was losing blood, and because he was so dizzy, he's like, oh my god, I'm getting magic, and then just gets run over, transported to an alternative world, and lives life at the beginning. But the story does kind of go over the beginning components a little bit fast. It doesn't take that long to go over each stage of his growing up, and then gets him into the school setting. And that's what I find fun about the beginning for the Eminence in the Shadow, is that, yes, he does end up getting run over by a car, which is something that happens with a lot of isekais, whether it's a truck or a car. How he goes about getting to that stage is kind of hilarious, because it's very much self-inflicted. He's doing these crazy, insane things, trying to live out this Chibio mindset, and it ends up leading to his demise, ends up reincarnating into a world where his delusions are reality. And he just keeps BSing his way through stuff, and it ends up turning out to being correct. And the people around him, which is a cast of female characters that serve him, as in the Shadow Garden organization, they kind of look up to him because he's powerful, he's always right, he's knowledgeable, but he also puts on this persona as well, which is the same thing Irons does. Irons practices trying to show this almost ruler type mindset, like a king or an overlord, as, yeah, pun intended, tries to play that role out. So he practices, he reads up on it, he observes other people's behaviors to try and imitate them as best as possible to show that he is exactly what he proclaims to be. It's the same with Sid in the Eminence of the Shadow. He tries to pretend to be something, but it ends up turning out perfectly. So if you do like Overlord, I really do highly recommend the Eminence in the Shadow. I will be doing light novel breakdown analysis videos and also other singular videos as the anime airs as well on this channel, so definitely have that to look forward to. And if it is something you're interested in, definitely tell me in the comment section down below. Have you read the Eminence in the Shadow? What are your thoughts about it? If you haven't, are you going to give it a try? As Overlord fans, I've read Overlord for many years now. I wasn't there from the very beginning, but I really enjoy Overlord's story and some of the directions that it has gone in. So seeing something that has a unique spin but kind of some similarities is just a nice breath of fresh air. So definitely really looking forward to the Eminence in the Shadow, and love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Again, a big thank you to my Patreon members for supporting the channel, helps tremendously. And of course, if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe for more anime content, and I'll see you beautiful nerds in the next video.